The ancestral mind arose long before logic or language appeared, and because it came online first, it has maintained its ability to operate as a separate system, quite independent of the thinking mind. The ancestral mind learned to communicate emotional information intuitively, non-verbally, and non-consciously over the course of millions of years. And much of the emotional communication between people today is still non-verbal and unconscious. It was the work of neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux that provided the physiological evidence for the key role played by the unconscious processing in our emotional life. His research not only confirmed the functioning of the ancestral mind, quite apart from the thinking mind, but also demonstrated that the brain itself gives priority to unconscious messages from this older part of us. Jung says, we know that the mask of the unconscious isn't rigid. It reflects the face we turn toward it. Hostility lends it a threatening aspect. Friendliness softens its features. There you are. It's specular. It's purely magical. If you approach it with false curiosity, fear, anxiety, anger, aggressiveness, evil intent, you'll meet demons. If you turn the other face towards it, of confidence, love, understanding, you see, and fearlessness, you meet your angels. To cross over there, you will stand on the ground that will morph under your feet into what you are. Saibak met himself and wept that he had been duped. So it is with us. The face we meet of God is our projection of ourselves. So if you go in there with the wrong intent, watch out. And that is why that realm is closed off to a vast majority of people in this world. Because this one statement is absolutely monumental. It's one of the greatest statements anybody could make. Because it throws all these lies about the unconscious and the soul into the dirt. Jung says it. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to stop from facing their souls. Then I have a question about those kinds of people. Nietzsche says, look, why does man not see things as they are? Because he himself is standing in the way. He conceals things. The surrealist artist Magritte said that everything we want to look at conceals something else we want to look at. Again, talking about the unusualness of perception. But what is Nietzsche talking about? He's talking about the social persona. That's what stands in the way, right? That pseudo-self, that counterfeit self is standing in the way of a direct relationship with things. Because this is the key to freedom, how to unlock this antipathy to nature, which has caused so much pain and destruction and aggression in the world. Again, as we say, it came from the prehistoric trauma. Not only does this concept allow us to improve upon those psychological theories, as we said, instead of shame and guilt, we can track this whole thing back to antipathy to nature. Rollo May says that self implies world and world self. There is neither without the other. And each is understandable only in terms of the other. The German rationalist philosopher Friedrich Schelling said it in fantastic term. He said, fantastic way, nature is visible spirit. Spirit is invisible nature. Obviously, the trauma that started all of this, including the genetic interference, is many thousands of years ago. Whether it was 13,500 or 50, it's really irrelevant, isn't it? So we can't physically, in some sort of Doctor Who scenario, go back physically to that place and undo the knot. That's fiction. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to. There's other ways to collapse time. Remember that thing we started off with? The imagination. Now you're going to find out how important it is. And why it's so absolutely superior to any form of technology. Is because that imagination that can do things with time, right, allows you not to go back in time, but to bring the trauma here to you now. We can't go back physically, but we can bring the trauma to consciousness here, where we are now. Bring it in front of us. Call it in front of you to deal with it. Once you know that it is a problem, right? Nature is eternal. Nature is timeless. So even though the trauma that existed that made the rend between us, right, was technically, historically a long time ago, it certainly wasn't in our personal life, so what, are we just stuck with it then? No. Each individual has imagination, this ability to constellate and concertina the time of history. This day you go for the first time as if you were doing it millennia ago. and you open dialogue, ultimately with yourself, but you do it to nature, to her. You go and say, hello, I'm back. And you will be. The moment that you do it, you will be, because she's waiting to talk to you. The conversation is long overdue, but she's very, very patient and has waited for each one of us to return. The whole thing rests in how you walk that road. Now for the true investigation of the solutions. When we spoke about imagination being a totality of experience, that's a magical act. A magical act is one that affects you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the lot, in one. Actually, very few things do that. Nature, obviously. Music is another. It becomes hard to think of any other. There are other ones, of course. The center of his theories of consciousness, of the whole problem of existence, is this concept of getting out of this, getting out of the reason, getting out of the mind, deconstructing all this nonsense, all the religion, all the mysterium. But what good are you if you don't replace it with something else? He replaced it with what you might want to refer to as the aesthetic experience, the aesthetic life. All response is not mental. It's total. It's of the imagination, and it's what's known as aesthetic experience. And in fact, our very first link with the universe, the first opening of the communication portal, was that. The universe spoke to us by its pure beauty. And Nietzsche was incredibly conscious of this. And to him, anything but this experience was livid, morbid, and vile. Now this awe doesn't happen rationally. It's something immediate. It's something awesome. And what is the tool that you use for all of this magic? Simple perception. Nothing rational required, simple perception. As a matter of fact, the aesthetic experience was the origin of science.